Today we're going to be painting a bright sky with some tulips, so grab your brushes and let's begin. For supplies, I have a deep edged canvas. This is great if you want to continue your painting onto the sides. I also have a jar of water, a flat brush, a wide flat brush, a cat tongue brush, a spray bottle, a makeup brush, a paper palette. For colours, I'll be using titanium white, wedgewood blue, cerulean blue, primary yellow, Naples yellow and crimson red. So starting off, I'm grabbing my spray bottle and I'm going to make sure that I get all of my canvas really nice and saturated, including the sides. If you have a regular canvas, you don't need to worry about the sides as much, but because I do, I am going to be painting the side as well as the main face of the canvas. Grabbing my cerulean blue and my wide flat brush, I'm just going to be starting to place down some colours. I'm not using a particular reference photo for this painting. I'm kind of just painting this from my head. However, if you feel like it would make it easier, then go ahead and look up a photo of a blue sky and definitely just use it as a reference point. Don't try too hard to make it look realistic, as we are just kind of making a simple version of a beautiful sky. Taking my wedgewood blue, which is my in-between colour, I usually like to work with at least 3 colours for kind of anything that I'm painting, whether it's a flower, a sky, a mountain. So I have my white, wedgewood blue and cerulean blue. So these are the 3 colours of my clouds and my sky that I'm going to be using. And my wedgewood blue is that in-between of not as dark and vibrant as the cerulean and not as light and bright as the titanium white. So I'm using this and with a wet, kind of slightly damp brush, and I'm placing this down on my canvas. Now going in with a clean brush, I'm kind of going in and slightly buffing it out and just kind of mixing the colors together. I'm not overly blending it yet. I just kind of want to pre-mix the colors before I go in and blend them together. This is just to remove any excess color that I may have put maybe too much of on the canvas, as I don't want my whole canvas to be blue, so I'm making sure to remove any excess color that I have on there. Now once I've done that, I'm grabbing my makeup brush and going with a light hand and small circular motions using with my wrist. I'm going to be turning it in a clockwise motion and moving it slowly around the canvas. Now I like to start off in the lighter areas first, so I first blend out where the white and wedgewood blue is, and then going in where the cerulean blue is afterwards. This is just to avoid moving that cerulean blue over those lighter areas that we have. Now, as you can see, it blends out really well and very quickly. So whilst it's still wet, I'm quickly going in with some titanium white just to emphasize those brighter areas that I want. And I'm going to be taking it straight from the paint and just adding it in with my brush, and then going over and blending that back in with my makeup brush. Now this is all done wet on wet, meaning I'm not waiting for that canvas to dry. I'm not waiting for the paint to dry. I'm working with all of these colours whilst they're still wet, which is going to allow for a really nice and smooth blend. Now going in again with some more cerulean blue, my canvas is still wet and I'm just going in there again and emphasizing. Well, in a way, slowly building up some depth and layers by slowly adding colours in a little bit at a time, going in and then blending it out. So you can take your time with this, and depending on how many colors you have in your sky, definitely work slowly and don't be in a rush, because you don't want the colors to suddenly blend all together and then you have one big muddy canvas. Now I'm going straight in with my makeup brush and just buffing in some of that white to create these kind of more wispy looking white fluffy clouds over that blue. And now we can see the clouds slowly coming together and kind of forming their shapes. So with that first layer, you don't really get to see much, but as you start to add more and more color, everything kind of starts to take place and you can get a bit more depth and definition. So grabbing that cerulean blue again, I'm going in for a third time. My canvas is still wet. Make sure to keep your blending brush or your makeup brush completely dry. I haven't dipped it in water once at all, because as soon as it touches water, it's going to add water onto the canvas and it's going to make it very streaky and give you a very unblended look. so you definitely want to keep it dry, and I only use my towel rag to take off any excess paint that it has on there. Now going in again and just slowly buffing it all out together until you're completely happy with how it looks. So this is just personal preference. So for me at this point, I just wanted to have a more soft look, so I just wanted to kind of get a smoother looking blend. Now grabbing my flat brush, it is completely dry, I haven't wet it. I'm grabbing some of the white and I'm going in a very light hand and doing these kind of small circular motions just to kind of create these wispy little cloud shapes. Now because my brush is dry, this is great because it means it's not going to actually affect the wet paint underneath. So this is just allowing me to work with the paint that I'm adding and not disturbing any of that paint underneath. Now I'm going in with a tiny bit of paint at a time. You don't want to go in with too much because it is dry, meaning it's going to be hard to move around the canvas. So you want to go in with just a small amount and really work it into the canvas so that you're able to get these kind of smooth, almost wispy clouds that take shape but are not overpowering in their color or how bright they are. So we're still keeping that very kind of smooth and a soft sky look. Now for the flowers, I'm grabbing my cat tongue brush and I'm grabbing some of that yellow and red together simultaneously. So we're going to be getting these multicolored strokes at the same time. This is just a way to just do two things at the same time. Instead of going in with some red and then going in with some yellow, you can just grab two colors on your brush, and that way when you push it down onto the canvas, you'll actually end up with two different colors, which is a great time saver, and also it just looks so much more nicer than going in and doing it manually. So I'm creating these kind of tulip shapes. I personally prefer to paint flowers in a more loose and impressionistic way, so I'm definitely not using a reference photo and just going from what I remember tulips look like in my head. I find when I use a reference photo, it can really disturb my creative process and allow me to just want to focus on exactly the photo and imitate everything, rather than let my creativity take control and allow me to just experiment and explore in things that I remember. And for me personally, everything when I'm painting is a shape. So tulips are almost in a way an oval, and that's what I'm focusing on. I'm painting ovals, and they might look like tulips, they might not look like tulips to some people, and that's okay. But what's important is that I'm enjoying the process and nothing is disturbing my creativity. So I'm doing some larger towards the top and some smaller as well. Sometimes I'm doing more red and then I'm going in with a bit more yellow, and sometimes I'm not. It really just play and have, just enjoy painting. There isn't a right or wrong way, it's just about having fun. So I'm not really thinking too hard about what I'm doing, and I definitely just want to create all of these little tulips that look like they are just bursting from the sky. And to paint some stems for them, you can just use all the colors that we already have on our paint palette. So you can mix the cerulean blue, the primary yellow and the crimson red, and that's going to give you a really nice dark stemmy green color for your flowers. And I can just go ahead and paint that in. And when I'm painting these stems, I'm not trying to create these perfectly straight lines. I personally like when stems look a bit more wibbly and they are not straight and they kind of bend. I think it just gives a bit more movement to the painting and the overall look when it's finished. So if they're all straight, it kind of looks robotic, and I always think that nature is imperfect, and that's what makes it so beautiful in its own way. So I'm painting these with a very light hand so that I don't get this perfectly straight line and I get more of this natural looking stems. Do do do. could stop at this point, but I definitely wanted to have more flowers in, so I'm kind of going in and adding towards the bottom part of the canvas a lot more little tulips and then adding some stems to them, and this is just giving the effect of like a tulip field. So add as many or as little as you want until you're completely happy with it. And this was the final painting. I'm so happy with how it turned out. If you really enjoyed today's painting, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more acrylic painting tutorials. And I can't wait to see you in the next video.